morning, everyone. So I am Valerie Blevins. I work in the QA engineering and development department. Been with ESC for almost 9 years now. We will be going over some of the StackVision 611 enhancements and fixes. In this feature, we had quite a few um, enhancements as well as bug fixes. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to talk about the important installation requirements. So this StackVision release 611 does not require a new license key. It must install 6.0 first for StackVision version 5.4 and below. Both Microsoft.NET Framework 3.5 SP1 and Microsoft.NET Framework 4.5.2 are required since 4.7 must have Windows Server and SQL Server 2012 or later. ESC currently do not support for StackVision on XP 2003, 2008, 2008 R2 systems for this release and previous releases. So we did a end of support extension. So the end of support date has been extended to March the 31st, 2021 for the following StackVision server platforms. So for Microsoft Windows Server 2012 Standard and SQL Server 2012, Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 Standard and SQL Server 2012, Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2, and SQL Server 2014 combination. So the support for that has previously been at 12/31/2020. That has been extended to 3/31/2021. So here is a visual chart for this particular support of the combinations of platforms that we no longer support, as well as the extension to the 2012 combinations that we still support, and also 2016 end date for support, as well as our new support of Windows Server 2019 and SQL Server 2017 combination, as well as Windows Server 2019 and SQL Server 2019 combination. So if you participated in any of our beta testing, even previous versions or even this particular version of StackVision, we want to say thank you in all different languages. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Your insight and suggestions are very much needed and appreciated. We would very much like to give you an applaud for helping us to see things that we might not see. Our suggestions are very much needed and appreciated. So thank you. If you want to be a beta tester, which I hope so, there are some benefits to being a beta tester. Sneak peek before official release. We actually send out the beta test, the release of it, StackVision, for that particular release to the beta testers a couple of weeks early before the general release is actually sent to the public. We can set up a screen share with you if you do not have a test server. So we can do a workaround for you and set something up on our virtual machines and test systems so you can have full access to that beta release. Get hands-on and give feedback. As being a beta tester, you can be the first two suggestions of what goes into the software and what you would like to see. Make sure your voice is heard. Beta testers will get the user group registration waived. So in previous, in the fall presentation user group, the beta testers were able to get their registration waived. This time being that it is online, it is free to everyone. But if we do meet in the fall, your registration will be waived if you are a beta tester. Again, you do not need a test server to be a beta tester. So please let us know, reach out to us. If you are interested, you can call support, let them know, and they will give your information to the QA department to get you set up for beta testing. So on to the good stuff. What is new in 6.11? So starting with the enhancements that were featured in 6.11, configuration compare. So in the config compare, there was an update fields now supported by 8864 framework firmware version 5.06 for the M-type and P-type channels. Fields were added. Pass constituent flags field, pass constituent BO flags field, and include invalid constituent flag fields were added to the config compare. Also added to support the 8864 firmware version 5.06 for the T and U type channels. Required full base interval, but int on, and require full base int off fields were added to config compare. There were enhancements to the controller emulation, update to the SSH client, the 8864 console emulator, also known as control emulation, in the StackVision client menu will now connect to an 8864 running the latest version of the 8864 firmware, which is 5.06. So now it is supported. Linearity and CGA editor. There was an update to the reason for test section, the alternative excuse me, annual test, CGA only. That option was added to the reason for test has been added in the linearity and the CGA editor. CGA test has been administered in place of a Part 60 RATA. So that is when you would use the alternative annual test, reason for test. StackVision OPC data mapper had some enhancements to it. So an option menu was added to the OPC tag mapping pane. And within that menu, there is a debug to dbo.opc data point table was also added. When enabled, it will write data points to table in SQL. And when disabled, the table will be purged automatically when the debug is disabled. QA test deadlines also had quite a bit of updates to it as well. So as mentioned earlier, the alternative annual test, CGA only, that test reason field has been updated to display the new reason that was added in the linearity and CGA editor reason for test dropdown list. So it is coinciding with that update for QA test deadlines. Also update flow meter accuracy test. The completed and reinstall date is now used to calculate the next test due date. The completed date is now displayed as tests performed. The installed date is now displayed as metered reinstalled. So there were updates to the RADA, linearity, and CGA editor, as well as the fuel flow to load editor. Tests appear in QA test deadlines when report in EDR box is unchecked. This means regardless if the report in EDR is checked or unchecked, the test will still appear in QA test deadlines. This does not affect the functionality of these tests being reported in your EDR. They will still function as usual. So if you check the box report in EDR, it will still report in the actual XML EDR generator. So also RADA and linearity and CGA and fuel flow to load parameters. So these tests will not appear in QA test deadlines if the RADA and linearity parameters are disabled in Stack Studio. So as previously mentioned, the functionality for the report in EDR box in StackVision, whether it's checked or unchecked, will appear in QA test deadlines. But if you do not want these particular parameters or tests to appear in the QA test deadline, you would have to disable them in Stack Studio. And that can be found under Stack Studio, Regulatory Programs, RADA, and Linearity section. On to reports. So opacity test report had a rename field, align checked perform, is now named optical alignment checked. That was better to clearly state what the actual opacity test is doing, so that renaming to optical alignment checked is more clear for the report. Performance summary report. New option to show equation is in the selection pane. When checked, displays equations used to calculate percent of operating time. So when selected, you will generate the report, and at the bottom of the generated report now shows the equation that was used. So StackVision installer got a makeover, a very good and needed makeover. So these are a few, quite a few slides that will be going over each and every page that was changed for the installer. And this is going from 6.11 forward. So if you are upgrading from a previous version of StackVision, you will see a difference. So on the welcome to StackVision, the installer window is now bigger with the increase in the font size. So it will be clearly seen rather than in previous 610 or previous where the screen was barely readable. The software license page, now the plant and license feature now display after you add your license keys. Also not mentioning on this slide, but also where you used to have to add the license key 1 before license key 2, now you can enter in either one at any particular order, and it will not prevent you from copying and pasting if you need to. Also, it does validate your license keys and show that validation to the right of the screen with the green check marks. So on the reporting services username page is now the service account page. In this particular page, it's the same fields, new information to clearly define what the actual username and password is being applied to. There will be later on in this presentation an advanced option that will be shown for this particular page. So this username and password that you are selecting or entering in, the account will be used to run StackVision reports as well as data management services for the actual administrators group on the server. So the database connection page also had a makeover. Same information, new location of the fields. Again, this was designed to be clear and precise on what is being selected as well as what it is actually doing. When you're entering in the StackVision database, the database will be created if it does not exist. It also will select for the installer whether it use Windows authentication or SQL Server authentication. Also, this particular page also has an advanced setting that I will be mentioning later in this slide presentation as well. So continuing with the database connection, you now have an option to change the SQL Server authentication. You can leave it as the default ESC CSV user, but you can now have a different user specified for your SQL authentication for the installer and data management for your SQL Server. So if you decide not to use the default ESC SV, you can change it to what you would like to. But be mindful that that particular user account that is being selected for SQL Server authentication must have administrative rights to your SQL Server. Once you hit apply, it will basically validate the permissions. So, and give you another green check mark if it is actually validated. But if it is not, it will actually give you notification that this particular account is not valid. So on to what I mentioned before about the showed advanced settings. This is concerning the service account and database connection pages for advanced settings. So on the service account advanced settings, to run StackVision services as a particular user, you can select to use the local system account that is being used to run the installer, or you can use a specified above account to be designated for your StackVision reports and data management services. As also mentioned, database connection does have advanced settings as well. So in this one, your SQL login for StackVision server services, you can use either the Windows authentication, or you can select the SQL Server authentication as the default. As previously mentioned, you can also change that to a specified user account, SQL Server user account with admin rights if you want to as well. And that is, again, authenticated and validated permissions, validated, that it will show you if that particular user you selected does have permissions to access SQL Server. So there also was some changes to the installation section of the installer. Now it shows a progress bar during installation, as well as a more clear and defined text of what the installer is actually doing. Very much needed. Links to the installation logs are now on the actual finishing of the successful install of the StackVision installation. You have links to the actual file itself or the actual folder where the files are located. You no longer have to search and look around. This is a very great addition to the installation. So there was some better error handling. Now the installer will check for StackVision Manager status before installation. This was addressing the infamous services being hanged in the starting or stopping status that probably would not been known to the user until it failed and you have called support and tried to figure out what's going on. So this is basically informing you beforehand. It notifies the user installation fails sooner during the process, at the beginning of the installation process, if it times out for that reason. Also informs the user why the installation failed with links to the log file and folder. So it will direct you to those files as well as the folder the files are located in. And within those files, just to a little additive, um, they actually document the whole process of the installation and each and every step and timestamp those steps, which is very useful when you are trying to debug or see what why the installation failed or even passed. It still documents. Onto the StackVision tools. So PuTTY and Win SCP, these latest releases of PuTTY and Win SCP have been updated in the StackVision folder. These updates are located under StackVision Application Core Miscellaneous folder. For those that are not familiar with these particular applications, PuTTY is used for access to the 8864, which does not require you to log into StackVision. If you want to access the actual communication emulator of the data controller 8864 without having to log into StackVision and go through that process. This is another alternative. When SCP is a file transfer file transferring protocol this application is used for. You do not have to use either one of them. These are just StackVision tools for you to aid you in your work for emulation as well as file transfer. On to StackVision bug fixes. So process now, flatline bug. Previously, flatline only looked at data between the start and end of process now sequence. This could cause some flatline flags to be incorrectly cleared. That has been fixed now. Flatline now has a look back and a look ahead that will allow it to always see beyond the process now data range. Flatline will only flag the data within the process now date range. So you do not have to worry about it changing any flags outside of the actual specified date range when starting the process now sequence. QA test deadlines also had some bug fixes. The RADA test frequency bug. The RADA test details are displayed as unknown for the test frequency. Now the RADA test details now displays the correct information. It clearly will state if you are selecting 2-quarter RADA, 4-quarter RADA, or any other ones that is in that drop-down menu of the RADA editor. Another update for the RADA test results bug. A failed RADA test appears as it's aborted in QA test deadlines. Now fixed to show correct status as failed. So when a RADA is aborted, that is now stated as a failed RADA in QA test deadlines. The next text due date bug. The next test due date calculated wrong if more than 20 calendars since the last test quarter. Now the next test due date is now calculating correctly for the following test types. When there are more than 20 quarters since the last test quarter, your flow meter accuracy test, leak check test, Knox correlation, the permit RADA, your primary element inspection. This is your Part 75 RADA and transducer test are now calculating correctly in QA test deadlines for the next test due date. The abbreviated linearity test, a bug was fixed that now ignores when abbreviated option is checked in linearity and CGA editor. What was happening when it was checked, it would basically miscalculate the next linearity test that was due. So now this abbreviated option, whether it's checked or unchecked, is ignored and now is showing the next test due date correctly. So on to report bug fixes. So opacity exceedance and performance reports bugs. When using the round limit to drop down in a report, only the standard limit would round. That has been fixed. Now the standard and the exceptional limit rounds correctly. This will actually affect a number of reports, your opacity exceedance events, opacity exceedance event duration, opacity exceedance event with memo, and opacity performance summary reports will all show correctly the rounded limit type, standard limit, as well as the exceptional limit associated to what you have selected for the round limit. Your CGA report had a bug concerning the SIMS value and audit value were inconsistent to other reports, mainly the linearity report. Now those columns have been switched in showing the SIMS value position with the audit value. So the audit value comes first, and now the SIMS value. The results box order now is also consistent to other similar reports, mainly the linearity reports. We wanted to make sure that the CGA audit report was very much coinciding with the linearity and showing the same information in the same order. So we have the average summary bug. The average data summary does not line up when the summary only options were selected. So when you generated the report, as you can see in the screenshot, it would go past the actual parameter column. That has now been fixed, and the average data summary now lines up with parameter columns. So everything should be lining up correctly for the average data summary section. So control chart bug. So in version 6, StackVision 6.10, a fix was put in place to allow the control chart to run when there was no load range for the selected RADA parameter. The fix has caused the wrong automatic load bin value to be reported in the report header. That has been resolved. The report now includes the load bin with the most hours in the report header when automatic is selected for the load bin. There were some bug fixes in XML EDR. The EDR XML tool generates wrong load range values at unit levels. This caused a critical 1 error in ECMPS that has now been addressed. XML tool now generates the correct load range value at the unit level. I know some customers, thank you to some of you customers that actually voiced that issue, and that was now resolved. The EDR with primary and primary bypass bug, the hourly data that is online is reported as 0 operating time in the EDR when the primary and primary bypass settings were set up for the part of the quarter. That is now addressed, the correct online time and associated monitoring hour value and derived hourly value now displayed in the EDR. And for the last bug of the XML EDR, when an EDR does not include a valid load range, the error message has been changed to clearly state load is either marked missing invalid or has a blank value. This must be fixed, and process now ran again successfully prior to generating the emissions EDR. This was a common issue that could happen when load is either missing, invalid, or left blank, or even out of control. It would, in the past, just tell you date and time, not really telling you what the issue is. Now it is clearly stated and states what should be done before generating a new emissions EDR. So there was some changes to the StackVision documentations. So StackVision Virtual Server minimum recommendations, the update to the recommended systems of the installation guide was updated. Flatline process now task, the description in Stack Studio user guide now includes both our power plant users as well as our all refinery users. And the migration checklist, move the stepped enable CLR and CLR strict security script has been changed to the configure SQL Server section. So make sure you look out for those if you are doing the migration, to be mindful that the migration checklist has been adjusted. So that is the end of the enhancement and the bug fixes for 6.11. Looking ahead in 2020, you should expect finish what we started, some changes and enhancement and bug fixes for logbook, QA test deadlines, OPC data mapper, process now will have a big feature to be released, and reports always regulatory, depending on any changes from the EPA that we need to address. And of course, any critical bug fixes that is come to our notification. So those is what we'll be looking ahead for. This is not a defined of exactly what we will be doing. There will be, believe me, more than this. This is just a summary of what I know that will be in upcoming releases in 2020. So summary, please notify support of any noticeable issues with StackVision 6.11 release. Take a look at our new features. Let us know what you think. And always, if you are not sure if something applies to you, contact support. They can be reached via phone, email, or live chat. We have added more agents to the support department, and they are always willing and helpful. So please contact them from any one of these options. They are available. So more sources of information. Look out for the release notes and user guide. Very much information concerning what I just went over. Upcoming webinars, they have been going on lately. You expect more from us for upcoming webinars on different issues. Please attend. Visit ESC website at envirosis.com for previous user group presentations and training material, as well as this particular webinar presentation. It will be posted as well on the website. Remember, ESC support is always here to help. That is 24/7. If you have a critical issue, please do call at any time. We will be willing to help. That is the end. Any questions?
Hi, Valerie. I have a couple questions for you. I
Yes.
see a question stating, I don't see any documentation for flatline in the help document. Will that be added?
Yes, that should be added in the StackVision documentation
Okay,
for the
another
6.11.
question is, when will QA test deadlines be out of beta?
That is a question that I would have to get an answer on from upper management above my pay grade. There have been a lot of changes, new features being added to it. So I think with everything kind of heads up in the background is going on with new features and new software that is coming out, we have to make sure that it all aligns and connects with StackVision and those particular new software features as well. So I can get back on you to you with that answer. That would be a development manager or project software project manager's question that he can answer.
Okay, I've got another question. It looks like the download was temporarily disabled. Is it available at this point, and is the issue resolved?
So it is not available today. It will be available early next week, Monday or Tuesday. The issue is resolved. It was a little um, issue with enhancement that was added that kind of messed up the polling, but that has now been addressed, and we're currently testing everything, completely regression testing it, and it will be ready for download early next week.
I had another question. I think you spoke to this. People wanted to know if they could access a recording of the webinar after it's done.
You can definitely do that, and the person that is asking the question, our new marketing person, Anna, she will be posting it right after this presentation.
Well, not directly after, but we're going to edit it first, and then we will get it to you as soon as possible. I think that's all I see on here. If anybody has any other questions, please submit them now so Valerie can get to them.
And even if you have questions tomorrow or any further down the line or any later today, you can always call support and they will be willing to answer the question or direct them to me. I will be available at any time to answer those questions if you take a look and decide that, oh, when it is posted that you had question concerning any features of this particular presentation.
Well, Valerie, I don't see any other questions.
Okay, I just want to thank each and every one of you for attending, and I appreciate the input and the questions. Please do consider being beta testers to make your voice heard. We really, truly appreciate each and every beta tester that give us feedback on the actual StackVision software. Please let us know if you're interested. You have a great morning and a good day.